Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever truly stopped to consider that your thoughts aren't just internal chatter? That they might be these powerful, energetic forces, constantly shaping your reality in ways maybe you don't even perceive? What if, those internal monologues are actually broadcasting signals? Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. How our inner world, our thoughts, our emotions, intentions, how all that profoundly influences the unseen companions, the energies we attract. It's a really eye-opening look, I think, at how interconnected our inner and spiritual worlds are, far beyond what we might usually imagine.
Absolutely. And our source for this whole exploration comes from a really rich Spiritist lecture. It offers some unique, pretty profound perspectives on consciousness, spiritual interaction, and importantly, our personal responsibility in it all. Yeah, our goal here is to pull out some genuinely surprising insights from this material. We want to help you grasp not just what happens in the unseen realm, but the deep why. Why your thoughts are so central to everything.
Okay, so let's jump right in, this core idea. Our thoughts aren't just internal. The source actually describes them as energetic magnets, constantly attracting. It explains how difficult emotions, things like disharmony, resentment, not forgiving others, or even ourselves, these aren't just bad moods. They actively attract energies, vibrations, and potentially, suffering entities.
Right. It's not just you feeling bad internally.
Exactly. The insight here is that your internal state is like a broadcasting signal. It's literally inviting specific energies into your space. Imagine your mind, sort of like a spiritual radar. If you're stuck in negativity, you're not just feeling down, you're actively lowering your energetic field, your astral vibration, the source calls it. You're basically putting out a beacon for entities drawn to those lower frequencies. It's like dropping below zero, energetically speaking.
And what's really striking here is how the source just flat out confirms. We truly have the company we seek. It's a direct mirror. And, people often wonder, do spirits see everything we do? Well, the material says you are incessantly surrounded by them. So yes, they're around. But, and this is key, they only really focus on what interests them.
Okay, so they're not just like watching paint dry unless they're interested in paint.
Sort of, yeah. But here's where it gets even more intense. Spirits aren't just limited to watching our actions. They can know our most secret thoughts, even the ones, we'd wish to hide from yourselves.
Yeah.
There's no hiding. Neither acts nor thoughts can be dissimulated for them.
Wow.
Yeah. So that idea of being truly alone, the lecture really challenges that. It says, when you think you're well hidden, you often have a multitude of spirits beside you. It's almost never just one spirit.
That idea of thought transparency is profound, isn't it? Like living in a spiritual glass house or something. And that leads right into this next point, the surprising extent of spiritual influence on our daily lives. The source has this statement that really makes you stop and think. Spirit's influence on our thoughts and actions is greater than you suppose. And get this, very frequently, they are the ones who direct you.
It pushes back against that feeling of total independence.
Right. You think, I'm independent, no one tells me what to do. But the source suggests, maybe that's often an illusion, it even mentions historical context, like Paulo de Tarso writing about being observed by a cloud of invisible witnesses.
Yeah.
So this idea isn't exactly new.
No, not at all. And if we connect this influence to, say, our vices, it becomes very tangible. The source explains how vices are related to our will, obviously, but they also provide this powerful incentive, this opening for entities who essentially feed off or amplify those vices within you.
So breaking a habit, like smoking or drug use, it's harder because of this spiritual dimension too.
Exactly. It becomes exponentially harder. You're not just fighting addiction, you're disrupting a kind of parasitic spiritual relationship. By choosing to break free, you're basically making these entities have to look for another source, another host. It will give work to them, as the source puts it. And it's important to understand suffering entities. Many of them will never for long think about goodness. They want to live that way.
They're comfortable in that state.
Or perhaps trapped. The point is, they cannot take that initiative for change themselves. It says you need to take action. They're living under the tutelage of their own thoughts and vibrations, kind of stuck in their own energetic feedback loop. And often they don't want out.
Wow. Okay, to make this more concrete, the source uses this really powerful example from the Gospels, the story of Jesus, Legion, and the pigs. It talks about Jesus meeting this young man in a cemetery near Gadara, a place where outcasts often lived. And this man was clearly dominated by several entities. When Jesus asked the spirit its name, the reply came through the man. Legion, because we are many. Chilling stuff.
It is, and the story even notes Pedro's reaction, how he actually stepped back when faced with this chief of a phalanx, this organized group of entities. Pedro recognized his own lack of firmness, his own vibrational inadequacy maybe, in the face of such a strong, suffering force.
So what happens next is just incredible.
It is. Jesus, using his authority, his power, determined that these suffering, malicious entities be cast upon a group of pigs. And the result was dramatic. The impact of the energy was so immense that the pigs just plunged into the abyss. Gone.
A huge economic loss for the city, right? Their main trade.
Exactly. And this is maybe the most telling part. The city's reaction, they closed their gates to Jesus. They prioritized their economic loss, the pigs, over the miraculous liberation they just witnessed.
Wow. That says a lot about human nature, doesn't it? Resisting things that challenge our comfort zone, even if it's liberation.
It really does. And it hammers home that core idea again. With our thoughts in our difficult moments, we attract energies and vibrations. And sometimes we actively push away the very help or change that could free us or others.
That story just powerfully illustrates the tangible effects, the sheer force involved. And it makes me think about subtler interactions too. The source mentions spiritual envy, which is interesting. It argues that people and spirits don't just envy what you have, like possessions. They envy what you are.
Right. It's not about the fancy car.
No. It says they look at you and think you are happy. That is already absolute reason for envy, even for suffering souls.
That fundamentally shifts how you might think about envy, doesn't it? It's about the state of being, the inner light, maybe.
Definitely. Which brings up a really practical question, one I bet a lot of listeners have. Okay, how do I tell my thoughts, apart from ones that might be suggested?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The source acknowledges it's complex. It says, your soul is a spirit that thinks. And we naturally have many contradictory thoughts on the same subject. So that internal conflict, part of it might be the mix, it suggests, of yours and ours. Your thoughts and suggested ones.
Okay, so how do we even begin to untangle that?
Well, the spirits apparently give some practical advice. They say, when a thought is suggested to you, it is like a voice speaking to you, a distinct impression. This is different from your own thoughts, which are generally those that occur on the first impulse. Your gut reaction, maybe.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The source uses this. Imagine you're about to do something foolish, impulsive, and suddenly this clear thought pops in. Don't do that. Will this cause problems? That secondary cautionary thought. The source says, that is no longer you. It is your protector.
So it's like a helpful intervention.
Exactly. Protectors don't take over, but they offer guidance. And apparently, they genuinely grieve when we ignore that guidance and make mistakes because it delays our evolutionary process.
That distinction is really helpful. But wow, developing that discernment consistently must take practice. So much internal noise sometimes.
And speaking of that evolutionary process, let's talk about the long-term spiritual side of things. The consequences of, well, not evolving. The source describes something really challenging. The inability to comfortably stay in higher spiritual planes if you haven't reached that level vibrationally. It uses this striking image of a lack of air, even for spirits. An energetic incompatibility.
Imagine that. You finally meet someone you deeply connect with on the other side.
Yeah, like a soulmate, the love of your life's spirit, the source says. And you literally can't stay with them because your evolutionary stages are too different. You feel like you can't breathe their air. You get maybe minutes together, and then that feeling forces you apart.
Heartbreaking, truly. But here's where it gets really interesting, almost paradoxical. This intense longing, this pain of separation, can become a profound motivator. It can drive a soul to choose to reincarnate, maybe even to a really difficult life, one of absolute suffering. Why? To accelerate their spiritual progress, to evolve faster, just to finally be able to be with those souls they have such a deep affinity for.
That adds such a layer to understanding motivation, doesn't it? And it might connect to feelings we have even now. The source talks about that feeling of melancholy. Some people get around 6 p.m., the Angelus, that traditional time of reflection. It suggests this might often be an unconscious longing, maybe for a life we don't have now, or for people who have advanced ahead while we have stagnated, a kind of spiritual homesickness.
And it also mentions that's a time when spiritual workers are actively collecting suffering souls.
Yes, it links that time energetically to rescue work as well. It all ties together. And this whole idea really reframes our concept of family and connection, too. We might be born into families absolutely strange to our spirit because real, Deep affinity, the source says, is among souls that have always exchanged emotions, feelings, lives on earth, and especially thoughts. It's a soul-level connection across lifetimes.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the takeaways are just huge, aren't they? The incredible magnetic power of our thoughts, the reality of these unseen influences constantly interacting with us, and this profound, ongoing journey of spiritual evolution, which is so deeply tied to our inner world, our choices, even our deepest longings.
It really gives you a lot to think about. So maybe the final question for you, the listener, is this. What are you attracting with your thoughts right now in this moment? And how much of that little voice in your head, the one that makes you pause, maybe question something, how much is truly yours? And how much might be an unseen guide or perhaps a lingering shadow?